This maybe
That's it.
let me add Anura here.
Yeah, that's all good. It's all good.
Okay,
We're
guys,
live.
you are
Huh?
live.
We're live.
Are you alive?
Yeah, it's
Ah, man. Let me add Anura here.
Yeah, that's all good. It's all good.
okay,
We're
guys,
live.
you
You
are
know,
live.
this is how this live
Live.
things. Are you alive?
Yeah, it's
Ah, man. Let me add Anura here.
Oh, I think we're gonna.
Yeah,
that's all good. It's all good.
okay, guys,
Live.
you
You
are
know,
live.
this is how Sorry, I'm hearing myself. There's something in the audio, the stream.
Yeah, there we go. Okay, now it's gone.
Oh, it was Tim.
All good.
All
Okay,
good.
let's kick it off. So, hey everyone, thanks for joining another Fluent Talk. Today we got pretty exciting one, Fluent Bit 1.9. We're going to walk through kind of what's in the new release, a little bit of a launch celebration, talk through some of the new features, talk through what's coming next. So be sure if you have questions, comments, drop them in the YouTube chat, and we'll try to get to them. So with that, Edward, you want to take it away a little bit, and I'll interrupt you as I find things more and more interesting.
Yeah. Let's do it more conversational. I think that most of us might have some kind of questions. So we already presented this kind of slides in a CNCF webinar. So I assume that if you're here is because you are a Fluent D or Fluent Bit user. And as you might notice, well, this week we released Fluent Bit 1.9. That for us is like a major version. And if you are not familiar with Fluent Bit, well, you might know that Fluent Bit and Fluent D are from the same family. Both projects are under the CNCF, and Fluent Bit is a graduate project under the umbrella of Fluent D. The kind of problems that Fluent Bit solves is like to be able to collect or receive logs and metrics from different sources and allows you to aggregate that information back on any destination, right? This is just like a quick intro. We can do logs. Metrics is fully written in C language, so it's made to be high performance and consuming very, very low resources in your systems. There are many users that when they deploy, for example, a Kubernetes cluster, they care about a lot about the performance of their own applications. But if your log or metrics agent consume a lot of resources, it might be a problem, right? Because can add more latency to the whole system. So that's why we focus a lot of in performance. And well, this is one of the cool graphics to show how Fluent Bit works. Pretty much we have a pipeline where we have data sources, we have filters to enrich your data, buffering to make sure that data does not get lost if the destination fails when sending the data out. Now, who use Fluent Bit? Pretty much most of cloud providers, companies, and even companies that has their own agents like Splunk. They use Fluent Bit to log DNA and Datadog. Now, from the community update perspective, I think that Anwar, you can take over this really great milestones here.
Yeah, we got deployed over 1 billion times. So something that's always fun is when we're watching an application get downloaded, you see the download counts go up, and I think with Fluent D, we were all super excited when it crossed the a couple 100 million threshold, and then Fluent Bit came along, and especially with containers, it's like 2 million Docker deploys per day. I think the one fun stat about this too is this is just Docker Hub, and there's like many other container registries out there that we don't account in this number. So maybe it's like 1 billion plus, right? And this is really just from one source. So great milestone, nonetheless, right? And I mean, it's got to feel pretty cool, right? Where you write some software, and 1 billion times it's been downloaded.
Yeah, I think that, for example, from a developer perspective, it's always important to see what's the impact of your software, right? But actually, yeah, I would say that this is not just a work of just a few people, right? Here we have many contributors. We have more than 200, almost hitting 300 in total, right? And one of the great things here is like we always hear about what were the use case for the users when we go to call KubeCon, different conferences. Hey, what you're missing? What's next, right? And that's where many features came in, right? Like Kubernetes filter, tail. We didn't support tail at the beginning. Also, well, I said Lua, Prometheus for metrics right now. So that is really, really interesting. Now you get one project being downloaded like crazy, but also you get more bug reports, more feature requests, enhancements. So this is really interesting, right? Because I think that now from a project perspective, it's like it's not about how do we make sure that somebody adopts this technology. Now it's about how do we make it sustainable. Like how the people who deploy Fluent Bit now can be trusted that this tool will be around for 10, 15 years, right? And we have a real vendor neutral set of maintainers that if I'm not here or Amazon just stop using it, yeah, the project will continue, right? That is an important thing. It's like pretty much you will find now in the market a bunch of servers with Red Hat 5, CentOS 6, right? And they're still working, right? We want to provide the same experience.
Yeah.
This part is really interesting, Anurag. I don't know if you want to elaborate.
Yeah, I think this has been like, anyone who's been using the Fluent projects, they typically download this treasure data package, and they'll go out and deploy, and really I think we really took a lot of the time to say this thing is getting used a lot. It needs a lot of maturity to be built in. Thankfully, there was a lot of open source tooling and open source stuff that the CNCF granted us, and we went to go try out some new CICD workflows, so like GitHub Actions, and let's do some more integration testing, and let's make sure that we have long scale testing for massive amounts of data. And so Pat, who was part of Clipped as well, worked quite hard on some of these things, and some of this is part of his blog post, or some of these images come from his blog post. And I think this is great. It's like any open source project will go through like a maturity curve, and as you're kind of drowning from all the usage, you've got to make sure you can scale it. And I think CI/CD is such a good way to scale. And actually, I'm looking forward to more stuff within this CI/CD workflow. So it's absolutely something where I could see us having even more coming through. And I think that one fun thing too is like more and more folks are running CI/CD for Fluent Bit and Fluent D. So how do we make sure those folks are also successful, or can take what we're doing in our smoke tests to make sure they'll also be successful?
Yeah, as a maintainer, right? Actually, in the past, we got a bunch of problems with the workflow of the development of Fluent Bit. Yeah, respecting PRs or the respecting have a full CI. We struggle a lot because also CI takes time. And sometimes we need to get a fix in place, but we had to wait an hour. Also, we make sure we tested everything internally, and then we found that, hey, this is not working on CentOS 7. Well, because it's breaking, the compilation process is breaking. Yeah. And when we went out, we had many times happened. We had the releases out, and we asked Pat, can we make that CentOS 7 builds, the source code on every CI, every PR? Yeah, and actually, that saved us a ton of time, because many times developers, contributors just put some, I don't know, a common example that was problem was CentOS 7. It's no problem, but the compiler has special flags for the C standard, right? Mm-hmm. The default is an old one, but in the newest one, C99, I think that, for example, you can declare a variable inside a for loop. In the old version, you can do it, but you have to say, hey, this is the new standard, not the old one. And it always breaks. So these kind of things are saving us a lot of time, and yeah, it was not easy, right? I think that it has been, months of work, and now we're pretty happy to say, yeah, we're going to ship one Fluent Bit release, and is tested in performance, in portability, in Windows, macOS, Linux. So there's more trust in general. I would say. So as a developer, I feel that I can try to break things, but the CI will trap them, right?
Yeah, that's super important when we start building like core new features like multi-threading and stuff, right? If it breaks anything else, then okay, now we'll be able to catch it. I think that's, and now we have nightly builds. Actually, that's a fun thing. So every day, if
Oh,
you want the latest and greatest, pull the nightlies.
yeah, we got nightly builds. We got more coverage on also on the security side by using fuzzing. We use fuzzing technology, Google Fuzz, in order to fuzz Fluent Bit. That fuzzing means it's a technique in which you get any kind of function or entry point and you send some data which is valid. You make sure that the function or whatever process it, it's okay. But then you take the same data and you start doing a bunch of random modifications. And in order to make sure that maybe we can trap some bug, some crash on that function because it's not validating the input properly. And that fuzzing work has been in place too. Actually, it's starting last week. We started putting more fuzzes in place. And now we're just seeing the internal reports of more problems. But it's associated with memory allocation. What
Yeah.
would happen if the memory allocator fails? It's unlikely to happen, but if it fails, at this in the middle of the function, right? Is it returning properly? Is it crashing? Is it generating memory leaks? That stuff is coming out also.
Yeah. And I think that's super important, right? Is especially if we're like writing this project and we're saying, okay, we're going to use the most high performing, low resource consuming language of C, like as low level as you can get. These are the places where, okay, hey, what are the trade-offs? And this is one of the trade-offs. And how do we mitigate that is to do a lot of the fuzzing and make sure that things are going to run correctly and properly. So yeah, totally.
One of the other things around the project was the recreation of our website. As you know, the old one is very old, right? Doesn't have any CSS or fancy things. So we tried to make sure that we had a new website that is top notch with right technology. Actually, we are following what other projects are doing, like Kubernetes Envoy. We are using Hugo as a framework. So, and now the new website is available on GitHub. So if you want to contribute with guides or anything, it's just purely Markdown. We will appreciate your contributions on that. I know that this project takes some time because going from design in Figma to translate to that HTML, then translate that to a template in Hugo, get it deployed, it took us some time. But yeah, most of the work was done by Anurag on that area. So thanks for that. Now we have a decent site, a really, really, really decent site, I would say.
Yeah. As long as, if more folks can learn about what's going on and how to configure, how to learn from it, that's always a big plus. And I think actually there's some fun things we're thinking we can add here too in terms of education and content. So
Nice. So let's jump into the code 1.9. Okay, this is I will have to adjust the slide. I have to do a minor adjustment here. One of the things is from a usability perspective, in Kubernetes, all projects use YAML, infrastructure use YAML, and most of the tools are around YAML and JSON. And Fluent Bit did not support YAML. Actually, for many historical reasons, but we hit a point where we said, if we implement the same configuration concepts that we support, but we offer a YAML layer, I think that, we're going to make things easier for everybody, right? But let's take the approach of not deprecate the old configuration mechanism. Let's use the new one, right? So let's use now Fluent Bit 1.9 supports YAML, but also support the classic mode. So we don't add these kind of breaking changes, right? So we created a new configuration layer that has two backends, one for classic mode, one for YAML, and both use a new API that generate all the structure of context for configs. I don't know if this is good to do it live, but I'm going to go to the slide and try to change the code here. I don't know if this is Oh, this is an image. I cannot change it. But anyways, the pipeline concept here is just a logic pipeline, meaning like sometimes we got the users like when you use Fluent Bit in production and you start having filters, a bunch of stuff, your configuration start to grow, right? And it's really hard to keep in mind what is the logic between this is my tag, this is my matching rows and filters and outputs. And sometimes you would like to have this in separate files or visually with a visual separation. So we said, hey, let's implement the concept of pipeline in the YAML file. Where we say we have input filters and output. It's not a logical thing. So you can have a better design for the config reader, right? So in terms of inputs, for example, here we have tail, but tail, this is an array. The typo here is that we don't have the dash, right? Same for filters, same for output. So you can have many tails, many input plugins, many filters, or multiple pipelines logic. We're going to start documenting this a bit more because also we want to get some feedback from the users. We support the same environment variables. You can include YAML files. So everything that you were doing before with classic mode, you can do it here in YAML mode. Okay, this is performance. And this is a really interesting, this work was done by AWS. And one of the things is like a Fluent Bit historically is like a synchronous service in a single thread. Used to be like that, right? So you have one main event loop where you have multiple events coming in, coming out. So you subscribe for notification, you ask the kernel to tell you when a socket is ready, when it's not ready, and so on. So with priority queue, the one of the problem that we got, well, actually AWS found this problem is like when you have Fluent Bit working at a very high scale, because it's all about the amount of scalability you have. Some events were losing priority. For example, you wanted to have more priority for scheduler events that task initialization, and not having an order for that added a lot of latency, a lot of congestion in the system. Now Fluent Bit support output threads, so threading in the output side. So part of this work was okay, let's take all of the events that event loop is going to handle, and put it on different buckets of priority, high, medium, or low, and put every certain of events on each one of them. And this ended up to having I think that 2 or 3 times more performant than the old mechanism. This is nothing that you have to enable, so it's just there in Fluent Bit 1.9. So if you run Fluent Bit at very high scale, you might notice some performance improvements and low resource usage when processing those events. As I said, also in Fluent Bit 1.7 cycle, which is the old version, 1.7 we have 1.8, we implemented threading support for the output plugins, but this was enabled on demand by the user. So you got the configuration and you have to enable. You have to say, yeah, workers 1, workers 2. And we found that most of users weren't doing that manually. So we said, hey, why we don't enable default threads for most of the output plugins? So now you will see default threading for Splunk, Elasticsearch, OpenSearch, HTTP, but you can also disable that if you don't want workers, or if you want, you might find that you have at least 1 or 2 workers around. Okay, let's talk about logs. Actually, just for the people who's watching this live, we have a chat enabled. So if you have any question, please just write your question. Happy to answer. Okay, log input plugins. We used to say input plugins, but now we have to say logs because we also have metrics plugin now. Okay, one of another performance improvement is in the tail plugin, where now we improve the tail plugin in order to be able to have better performance on start. Because if we had we have many use cases, like 50,000 files on disk, and you're going to process all of them, Fluent Bit was taking so long in this boot up process, this start process. Now it will take a few milliseconds. We have a new Kafka source or input plugin, which behaves as a subscriber, where you can subscribe to one or multiple topics and extract messages and do all your magic with filters. And if you want, you can use a Kafka output plugin and reingest these processed messages back into another topic. That's one of the use cases. We have in Windows a classic plugin called WinLog which used to consume messages from the classic channels. Now, if you have non-classic channels for security or other stuff, now we have a new plugin called WinEVT-Log, which allows you to read from these non-classic channels. All of this is available on 1.9. Now, for filters, we have a new filter that was implemented by this company called Nightfall. Nightfall is a vendor that provides a way to protect your logs, PII, all that stuff. So it helps you to scan, log your logs, and redact any sensitive data. So they provided this filter, and it's available from Fluent Bit 1.9. And in the output side, we have been working closely with the OpenSearch team. So we did a close work between with OpenSearch in two areas. One is FluentD and also Fluent Bit. So FluentD has a new native connector for OpenSearch, but also we have the same connector in Fluent Bit. We started as a base with the old Elasticsearch connector, but now we are going to start implementing the specific features for OpenSearch on that specific plugin. Our suggestion is, if you're using Elastic, please keep using the Elastic plugin. If you're moving to OpenSearch, please use the OpenSearch plugin instead of the Elastic one, because at some point the functionality might be different, or you will find different config options. S3 is a very, very used output plugin. Most of users likes to store the data in S3 buckets. But also we got this contribution that say, hey, I just don't want to store my data in JSON. I need to have it in Apache Arrow because I'm doing some analytics stuff. So now the S3 plugin support encoding for Apache Arrow. So this is a very common use case. So we're happy that we got this contribution from the company called ClearCode from Japan. Now, another fun part is Fluent Bit and metrics. The way that we see Fluent Bit project itself is like the core of the ecosystem, right? When it's multi-platform, right? Multi-platform means supporting different kind of operating system, like Windows, Linux, macOS, but also multiple architectures, right? For us, we have a bunch of users deploying thousands of instances on ARM64. But also there's other interesting angle, which is, I don't know what's the right word, but it would be like multi-frameworks or multiple ecosystems, right? As you know, and if you go around and you see what is the standard for metrics in the market, right, you will find that everything is instrumented with Prometheus. If you ask yourself, what is the standard for tracing? Yeah, it's OpenTelemetry, right? Despite that OpenTelemetry now can do metrics, yeah, one is the status of the market and the other is where most companies will go. But what is our position as a project? And as a project, we try to be one is vendor agnostic, and the other is like platform agnostic or framework agnostic or project agnostic. Meaning that if you have your applications instrumented with Prometheus, we want to provide the ability, right, to scrape your metrics or receive your metrics from Prometheus format and send that out as logs or translate that into an OpenTelemetry payload for you, right? Because it's not like when you go to an environment, you will find, yeah, this is all unified in one way. It's not like that. It's not like that. For example, if you think about databases, you will go to any environment. It's not that you have just MySQL. No, you might have MySQL, Oracle, PostgreSQL, Redis as a cache, many kind of implementation for different use cases. And the same thing we are seeing in the observability space with logs, with metrics, with traces. Now, where are we going as a project? Our vision is like we want to be able to connect both worlds, the Prometheus world with the OpenTelemetry world, and offer this option to connect metrics from one side, send it through OpenTelemetry, scrape metrics, or receive OpenTelemetry payload and send that out, to any destination or backend. Right, and that's one of the vision, and that's the focus of now is in the metric side. And as a metric implementation in Fluent Bit, right now we're shipping a new Nginx metrics collector. So Fluent Bit you can point it out to your own Nginx web server instance, scrape the geometrics, Nginx ship the metrics in JSON, So we can go there, take that JSON, convert that to our metrics payload, and ship them out through Prometheus Exporter, Prometheus Remote Write, OpenTelemetry metrics, or anything. This new plugin supports Nginx open source, but also Nginx Plus, which is the enterprise edition. And also we're shipping another plugin for Windows, which is called Windows Metrics Exporter, which is experimental right now, which is collecting CPU sample from Windows. This is based on the Prometheus Windows Exporter. It's pretty much trying to replicate the same functionality, but for our Fluent Bit users. So our users does not need to have two agents in place for the same functionality. I say that this is experimental because we are just collecting CPU. We still have to add file system, disk, and network within others. Okay, and now we jump into the Prometheus world. In Prometheus, for us, it has many angles, right? Input, output. And in the input side, we are launching a new Prometheus scraper. So meaning that Fluent Bit, you can point it out to any application that is exporting metrics in Prometheus format, scrape those metrics and process it through the pipeline, even as a metrics payload, of course. In the output side, we have enhanced our Prometheus exporter plugin, which is a way that, any metric that we get inside Fluent Bit, I'm not talking about Fluent Bit metrics, any metric that we get, we can expose it in different ways. One of them is through Prometheus exporter, meaning that we can wait for a client or an agent to scrape those metrics, or also we can push the metrics out through Prometheus remote write, which is a Prometheus protocol for network transfer. Now for the OpenTelemetry world, right, which is also part of the CNCF ecosystem, we start experimenting with OpenTelemetry metrics, right? I know that this is not the biggest use case, but we wanted to get familiar first with implementation, with the spec, and we are shipping now, which is OpenTelemetry output metrics and an input plugin to receive OpenTelemetry metrics. Now, the next step within the Fluent Bit 1.9 release or development cycle is like we're going to start implementing support for traces, at least route traces. This is a very common request that we get from the community. And as our vision, as I said, we want to be able to connect all the worlds, all the implementation, all the protocols possible in the Fluent way, right? So yeah, we're launching these two plugins and they're ready to go. So this is really good. But as I said, we're going to iterate and add more stuff during 1.9. Well, I think that's mostly about the presentation. Just keep in mind that Fluent Bit aims to be the Swiss Army knife for all metrics logs processing, but also shortly we will play something with traces. Okay, thanks for watching. I think that this is the last slide from the presentation. I know that we have some people watching this live, but feel free to send your question on the public Slack for Fluent on the Fluent Bit channel. I will be happy to answer anything like that. And remember that every 2 weeks we get the Fluent Bit community meeting. I'm going to quit here. If you go to the Fluent Bit website, right, to our new website, that's good. And you go to the community link. Here you will have all the information about the Fluent Bit monthly community meeting. Well, we need to fix this. It's now every 2 weeks. Just feel free to join the meeting. If you want to raise a topic, anything, please do it. We have an agenda, so you can discuss your topic, say, hey, I'm struggling with this, or we would like to see this kind of feature. This is our use case, and we're missing A, B, and C. Okay, so that will be for now. I appreciate your time watching this new Fluent Talk. And yeah, please join us next Friday. We will be happy to having you here, doing some Q&A or informal communication.